Ladies and gentlemen, warm welcome to the 87th IREPAS meeting here in Monte Carlo. We will have our traders session today in the usual format. You have been asked before to give your questions to the panel. We have yesterday, we have discussed those questions already in the preparation meeting for the traders, which is actually open to most of you guys as well. And so we collected already and we exchanged already some ideas and prepared some answers to those questions. So to facilitate, maybe we just put the questions on the slide here, and then I give you a quick moment to read them, and then the three of us will try to answer those questions. But please take in mind that we really want to have an interactive communication here. We don't want to just say our opinion, but we really would like you to act and to react in case you are not agreeing, in case you have a different view, or you can add informations to what we are saying, because everyone has his circle and his views, and we definitely don't believe that we have the entire know-how in our heads. So there is a lot of know-how here in this room, and we really like to share it with all of you.
Anyway, the first question is how much and where is the Russian steel going? It's a really tough question for us to answer, but from what we understand and discussed with some of our colleagues is that it's still going to Africa, China, and Taiwan and Egypt from the countries that we heard of. But we're not 100% sure this because this is really not all done openly. So if you all know any other countries where this Russian steel is going, please let us know. You guys.
Yeah. What we also found out in that on that question is that beside those countries which are not following the sanctions against Russia, that still it is possible for Russian mills to import an enormous amount of semis to Europe. Like we have gotten information that about 3.5 million tons of slabs from Russia are going into the European community. A lot of that is coming from one particular mill who has production facilities in Europe. So they are re-rolling those slabs, which is quite astonishing to some of our fellow traders, because we thought that this should definitely not be the case, and some were questioning why this is being allowed if finished products are not being allowed to enter the European borders, but the semi can, and so you still give business opportunities. So if any one of you knows more about that, please feel free to add that. So then, don't we go?
Yeah.
We proceed with question number two.
Okay, let's just do that. Is it possible to increase the Ukrainian metallurgical products exported through the Ukrainian ports in the coming months? Now, obviously, some of the ports of Ukraine is already been destroyed, but there is still one port that they can ship out of. And I know for a fact that the mill Interpipe is still selling to the US regularly, though they are in the northern Ukraine and away from the war zone. And I don't know how that long that will go. And I don't know the others. Maybe you all can help. I'm assuming Mariupol, but I don't know. I don't know. I know the mill that ships to us. Okay, Odessa probably. I don't know because I know the arriving from this mill. Which port? I don't know. You must know better. Go tell me. Galati from Romania? It's possible. So they're from Ukraine, goes to Romania, and then yeah,
Lithuania.
very much possible. So there's no ports in Ukraine that is operational right now. It's not. And how do they carry their what by trucks? Rail. Makes makes sense.
Hmm.
Makes sense. It makes sense because I remember when I discussed with the importers and I said, you know, how is the cost and all that, they said the transportation is their major expense now in shipping. It makes sense. So even iron ore was coming to Galati and then going out. Yeah, I know, I know. Very interesting. Yes. Yeah. Liberty is the now owner of the Galati. Yes. Oh, that's separate.
Thank you.
Okay. The next question is, how do you assess the possibility of secondary sanctions of ex-Russia steel and raw material imports? Is there a mechanism for this? Maybe you can reply.
Uh, well, so far as we are aware, Canada and the US are very, very actively following the origin of the material up to the raw material. So you have to prevent and provide evidences where of the whole supply chain. In EU, as far as we figured out yesterday, it's not the case yet, but it's coming more and more from the consumer side that really people are asking, well, is this material coming from, or has a material been produced from any raw materials coming out of Russia? So it's more an end user question rather than right now a political one. But to what extent this will be becoming a partner of the AIDS sanction, we were not really aware of. Does any one of you guys have heard anything about EU going further also in the supply chain and
Or maybe, do you have any customers that is telling you that they're not going to buy if it's Russian origin material? Do you have any customers like that that you are restricted to ship? I mean, in US it's automatic because you can't really import if it's not melted and poured in those non-sanctioned countries. But do you have any customers? Because it's interesting that to hear that the customers are requesting that. So does any one of you have customers that is requiring?
Phil? Mm. Yeah, it's an ethical thing. Yeah.
Are they willing to pay more for that?
Yes.
That's good.
Even when we have the inquiry for the some certain material from China, especially for the raw material, for example, coal. So we've been given the option to the customers, even from the China, saying that would you like Chinese material or Russian material to be shipped from China? But some of the certain customers, they don't want to touch the Russian material.
I guess the diversion issue is not new for the US. We had it for a long time because for they came up with this melt and pour. So they need to know the origin of where the steel is actually melted in the US. And now you have to present a melter certificate clearly indicating where the steel is melted and poured. So this originally started with trying to uh, stop the circumvention of, let's say, material coming from China to Vietnam and Vietnam to the US. And they are really vigorously going after that. But I guess they're using the same principle and applying for the Russian origin material as well. Can it, please? Uh, you're right. There's a double standard there because the pig iron is not the is one stage before it's melted and poured to become a billet or slab. You're absolutely right. It's we don't ask where the iron ore or pig iron is coming, but we are asking where the billet or the slab is coming. So it's there's a loophole there, and just like we understood that there's a serious loophole in Europe where 3.5 million tons of slab is coming and goes through. Anyway, let's just move on because it looks like we have a bunch of questions. What changes do you expect in the global steel market, first and foremost, after the eighth package of sanctions against Russia will be effective? Frankly, I didn't know that the eighth package includes steel, but maybe you all can comment.
Honestly, not really. I have we have discussed yesterday, and we haven't really found to what extent this eighth package could be having any impact on this global steel market. Unless any one of you have more detailed information on that eighth package.
Well, let me ask, what was the seventh package? I don't know. Anyway, I I'm I do realize it's oil and gas, but I didn't know anything about the steel being involved, and I didn't know if it's the eighth or the sixth or the 10th. Vodka.
Vodka.
Vodka is still coming though.
Yeah, I think one item of the eighth package is the oil cap on the price, so that only at a maximum price vessels with Russian oil are allowed to enter European ports. Yeah, so they have to provide evidence that you bought this oil at a maximum level of price, and then it is allowed to be entered.
So what happens if it's higher? They don't allow?
No, you're not allowed.
What's going under the table?
That you have to ask the people dealing in the oil.
Okay. I guess the next questions are on the energy crisis that we're all going through. And the first one is energy crisis in Europe and Turkey, and if its effects on global market direction. Well, we had a lot of discussions about this morning, and I think both Europe and even Turkey is being affected, but I think the major effect of the energy crisis is the Russian oil and gas that is not flowing into Europe, which mm, depends on those two for the longest time. So the effects is the prices going high, and the effects is there's not enough of it. So I think they're expecting a cold winter. Yeah.
In
Uh, well,
in 1st of April in Turkey, there was a natural gas and electricity cost increase. And in the production of the steel, we have seen the price increase of $50 per metric ton. And also beginning of October, we have seen another increase on the electricity and natural gas, which is referring about plus $10 more in the production cost. But unfortunately, we didn't see the same increase in Southeast Asia, in China, in Middle East. So we know the reason why.
Yeah, and what we also have seen is that, for example, the price, electricity price in Spain is much less than we have in Germany, for example. So because it's subsidized by the Spanish government, and so the price we figured out per megawatt hour was about 180 euros, sorry, dollars, um, versus Germany with 450, 470. So it's quite a big difference in the price inside Europe. Please.
please.
Hmm.
I mean, in Turkey, the appliance for the home usage is different and industry is different. But there is no, for all industries are the same. There is no individual industry that they are reflecting. No. We have a 50% increase.
I think in Europe we do, Phil, right? I think we have various prices for the households, of course, is one price, and then for heavy and electricity consuming industries like cement, like steel, and so on. I think they have a different tariff than those who are having, let's say, a medium size consumption.
The gas, yeah, go ahead.
Can we have a microphone, maybe?
Yeah.
Maybe you all get closer to each other. We have so much space and empty seats here.
I was just saying that in Europe there's a very well developed power market, a power exchange, and it's very easy to trade, to buy, to hedge, to cover for different periods, quarterly, monthly. You know, you could buy today calendar 24 electricity if you wanted to for different markets. There's a
You
very
mean industrial use or
industrial use. So you can look at it. There's a website you can go on to. It's called EEX, European Energy Exchange.com. You can go onto that website. You can have a look at the futures contracts that are traded in real time on LNG. You can see what calendar 24 electricity would cost in Spain if you bought it now, as opposed to 1 hour ago or 1 hour's time. It's a very lively market. And obviously the prices are very different. So I mean, I didn't look for a couple of days, but for example, if you want to buy January power for Germany, last time I looked, it was 650 euros, middle of winter. If you want to buy calendar 23 electricity in Germany, it was 450 euros for the whole year. So you get these differences in power costs that
That is the same in the US. In
the
the
US
US,
the US has
is
very
always
developed power.
hedged.
Well, it was developed by a well-known company called Enron, who then went bankrupt, but it has subsequently been adopted
Oh,
all over the world. This idea
yeah.
of power trading, and actually, though I hesitate to say this sitting next to a German, but the Germans have been, as we learned this morning, by far the smartest in thinking how they're going to control energy demand with this idea of um, saying if you use a certain percentage of your normal energy, you'll pay the current price that will be subsidized by the government. So it's not an open-ended, unlimited liability for the government. If you're using 100 megawatt hours per month, you will pay today's price or normal price of 50 euros per megawatt hour, whatever the historic price was for your first 70 megawatt hours. And then for the next, you'll pay market price. So that's the only way, using economics, you're going to destroy, or let's say cut demand and therefore bring the prices down. Whereas other countries like the UK, who've done it completely stupidly, or Spain, who've also done it fairly stupidly, is they've just subsidized the price by saying you won't pay more than X per kilowatt hour, which doesn't reduce demand.
No,
It
no.
just subsidizes the businesses.
In the US, we have a similar system. So there's a very minimum amount of usage that is low priced and it's basically subsidized. Past that, you just go to a second rate, which is much higher. And I don't think they have done it to have the consumption lower. They just did it because they want to help the certain housing that doesn't have enough funds to be able to pay for it.
I think they've done it to get the consumption lower. That's the only way you incentivize people to get consumption lower, is you make the upper amount of energy used much more expensive. I mean, I don't know if I'm the same as other people in this room, but I never even thought about electricity prices for the last 30 years. I've been steel trading since the 80s, and I've never thought about power prices until the last 12 months. And now I look at them every day.
Yeah.
Every day I follow the power prices. I mean, what I noticed when I turn around that Gookham is in the room. Can you tell us? Actually, there's two things I was just going to comment on the previous question on Russia, because the other thing I would say I've noticed, particularly in Turkey, there are certain producers who themselves refuse to buy Russian raw material.
Right.
I would say those are let's say the more respectable producers, and certainly Cholak is one of those. And you do not buy Russian material, so you can be very sure if you buy.
Basically, the ones who sell to the US are
Not only to the US, it's just the one, it's also an ethical question. There are certain producers who've taken the decision, we will not buy Russian
right.
raw material. Cholak's one of those, and I think full respect from me for them that they've done that. So that's it's a decision that they took. Nobody forced them to do that. So this is not an advert for Cholak, Gökhan, but it is the truth. But the question I was going to ask you, I think we're all clear how much electricity is used by an electric arc furnace to melt a ton of steel. What I'd like to know is what your gas cost is currently in Turkey to convert or to reheat a billet before you re-roll it into a rebar, roughly per metric ton. And power would be about $150 today, right? So $170 in total for energy, electricity plus gas in Turkey today. Yeah.
Yesterday, I asked that question to one of the producers in Turkey, and they have told me that about $100 a ton is used for melting to make the billets, and about $80 per ton is for the rolling. So total cost is today is about 180, 175, $180. So that's how they differentiate. And from what I understand, again, what they told me is they use 0.5 megawatt per 1 ton, production for melting only. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, we will most probably speak about the current impacts, but what will be the medium and long-term impact for Europe, Turkey, and the rest of the world?
Actually, we have already started to see the impact already. It's a long time that Turkey was not importing material or the raw material rather than Russia and Ukraine earlier. But we've been seeing right now, since Southeast Asia cost production is coming down compared to Turkey, or we can say in Turkey, the cost production is increasing. We've been seeing recently shipments from Southeast Asia to Turkey, from Middle East to Turkey. So the Turkey became right now the net importer from the region that where Turkey used to export to. So what we believe that the door for importing, it will be more open for Southeast Asia producers and for China.
Well, it's a natural effect. You know, when you increase the prices, in the short term, people will continue to do what they need to do, but in the long term, they will start saving and conserving. So you will see the demand really will come down. And when the demand comes down, then the steel mills will have to look at their their portfolio and decide if they want to lower the prices and either, you know, and keep the mills idle for a while, or really push on to the raw material suppliers, the scrap men, or to lower the prices. I think you will see that the net effect will be a big pressure on the raw material salespeople. Yes, please. Excuse me. Can you bring the microphone, please, here? Who's handling the microphone? Yeah. Can you just be close to here so that you can?
Well, we had 10 years ago a company dealing in energy and renewable energy. There was first the contracts to buy from the photovoltaic to the grid. At that time, they started with a commitment of 32 cents the kilowatt compared to the cost of the production, which was for the nuclear energy, which is 78% in France, about 6-7 cents. That was sold by the marketed at 12 cents or 10 cents if you are building your industry next to the zone of production. So there was a big gap, 32 cents. Slowly there were many projects. They brought down the price of commitment to the grid to 28 cents. Then come back to 25 cents. And if you make a big, how you say, farm, bring it down to 12, to 22, 20, and then maybe they limit the production. Today, when we see the price, which is what, 40 cents or 30 cents, then these projects are again profitable and will come back in the market, even without the support. And this is good for the industry of steel that will produce more of the, equipment and wind farms and I think photovoltaic farms. This is
Actually,
a
similar
good
thing.
opportunity for this sector.
That's true. Actually, similar thing happened in Turkey. I know that the geothermal industry was getting a subsidy of selling their energy to the grid at $10, and actually the local price was like $5, so they were getting a $5 spread, and to survive, to make this thing happen. So that kept on for a while. Well, today the cost is $12, and those guys who made a contract with the government at $10 are really demanding to see if they can get the additional $2 like they used to get. So they got $5 advantage for years, and today they are $2 disadvantage compared to the real price. So it's the same.
They had
yes.
long-term commitment for 10, sometimes 25 years.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I
We had the
remember.
same in Germany with that when you started very much in the early days of photovoltaic, they even paid 45 cents. Yeah, and today you get 8 cents. So, but nevertheless, this war and this situation we are in right now is certainly the biggest advertising campaign for photovoltaic and renewable energy. And I think everyone who has the money,
And maybe come back to nuclear because of the green in Germany
Right.
20 years ago, the nuclear had to reduce little by little.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, the next question is actually for Europe. With changing scenery, we see Asian suppliers are also active in offering to the EU region. How do you see this as a threat to traditional exporters' competitiveness position in EU market? Maybe you can-
well, talking about long products, I would say that so far Europe is still pretty much protected by the safeguard measurements, and on top of that, it's protected in particular on rebars by the so-called homologation certificate you need to have for every country, and that makes it for Asian suppliers extremely time-consuming, and it's a long process to run to get those homologation certificates in place. A year about you need to invest, and yeah, sometimes the people don't have the willingness to go into such a application because after 1 year nobody knows how the situation will be by then. Will they still be competitive or not? On wire rod, yeah, definitely there is much more activity from Far East, but also more coming now from the Middle East that we have definitely seen. But due to the quotas and due to the restrictions of the safeguard, it did not come to a real massive pressure on the market. So we see, of course, that the German mills are reducing their prices, which is amazing because the cost price increased by the electricity, by gas and everything. So the costs increased significantly, but the prices are going down
Yes, it
for the
is.
rebars. But this is not really in conjunction with the imports. Imports have been there and will be there. In the past, they were coming heavily from Turkey. This is being limited now because of the safeguard and the quota. And so far, there is really a very limited amount of players in the rebar market to Europe.
What is the price difference between the imported, let's say, rebar versus the domestic rebar?
Yeah, it's not easy to answer.
Approximately.
70? I would have said more close to 100, but 70 to 100, maybe. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Take 100.
how do they justify paying 70 more euros for it? Is it because it's timely?
Logistic. It's logistic.
Ask this man, he buys it.
Yeah, can you please comment?
It's a question whether you are able. Sorry, it's a question whether you are able to do imports in a reasonable way. So there are companies who can do the import reasonably with the logistics after receiving the material in the port, and there are others who can't do it. And it's also a question of liquidity. So you need a certain amount to do it in a reasonable way. If you can't do it, you have to buy it domestically.
Yeah, but let's say a distributor already has ability to do both. Why would he pay 60 or 70 euros more for the domestic versus imports?
You have to do it if you have an urgent demand for a certain size, diameter, length. That can happen.
It's also more risky.
And rebars coils is, of course, one item which you cannot get from imports. Rebars coils is
Why not?
it's in the form as we have it in spooled form. Yeah, there is literally, I would say, no producer outside of Europe producing the material in the form required by the German market and the European market, I must say.
And the certification is missing.
And the certification. Yeah.
So you have a special certification for the rebar in spools?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's also according to the DIN 488, but you have to have a special certification just for those. And the deformation pattern is extremely critical, because if it runs automatically through the machines and through the rolling, yeah. So if you don't have the proper geometry for the surface, uh, in some machines it may run, in other it won't run, and no one will ever take 3,000 tons of this material not having tested if it works or not. And the inside diameter is normally much bigger than what we use in Germany. Outside dimension is bigger. The coils are having only 1.5 to 2 tons, while in Germany, meanwhile, we go up to 8 metric tons coils.
But I mean, for rebar in coils, I can understand the geometry makes a difference to avoid the torque. But for rebar in spools, it comes out. So you know, obviously, whoever is doing it, whoever is producing it, has to produce with the certain geometry so it can be spooled and despool with the same speed. Anyway. All right. Next questions are on raw materials. Interested to discuss the current spread between the scrap price and the rebar price with a view of exploring the reasons behind the historically high, which is $300 a ton, I guess, spread. You have comments?
Can you answer?
Okay. After this, the electricity and natural gas increase, we've been seeing that the cost of the production is reaching easily not less than $350 per metric ton. That number used to be in the level of, just before the September, in the level of $270 to $280. But we roughly seen the increase of per metric ton, 80 up to $100 cost increase.
Do you all agree? I guess you do. Yeah, go ahead, sir. Philip.
Yeah, I mean, it moves on a daily basis, and I would probably put it slightly lower, but I'm sure the mills would put it slightly higher. I'd probably put it at 280, but it's a very easy calculation. If you buy 100 tons of scrap, you can produce roughly 80 tons of rebar from it. So then you work out your wastage factor. That's quite an easy bit of maths. And then, as we've just heard from Gökhan, he spends $20 a ton to reheat a billet with gas so he can roll it. And we know that in order to melt scrap in an electric arc furnace, plus the power that's required in the rolling mill to drive the mill, so that's electricity driven, that's not gas driven, you use about 650 kilowatt hours per metric ton. So as you say, 500 kilowatt hours to melt the steel, but then Gökhan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think around another 100 kilowatt, 150 kilowatt hours for the actual rolling mills and moving the material onto the cooling beds and things, all of which takes quite a lot of power, and cutting the shears, which are all driven by electricity. So 650 kilowatt hours per metric ton, and a kilowatt hour currently costs you in Turkey $250 a ton, a megawatt hour roughly. So that's $125 just on the, sorry, when I talk about 250 times 0.65, so whatever that works out at, $150, let's say, on electricity, plus $20 on gas that we worked out. So you're at 100, 170, 180 just on the energy. And then we've got to work out the loss of scrap, which is at 20%. You can quickly get up to $280, $300. It's not very hard maths.
Yesterday, I asked this to a steel producer, and he told me that today's number is around $350 spread. I'm just reporting what they told me. I don't know. All right.
Kirkham, what do you think? Sorry?
It's going up. It's big. Yeah, I know. I know. All right. Next question is steel production in most parts of the world, including China and the US, is on a declining trend for the past several months. What does it say for iron ore consumption and prices? Well, I guess iron ore has to come down as well.
Yes, recently iron ore price is coming down. So the level of iron ore right now, $96 CNF, China. So regarding the consumption, which I don't think so that the consumption is going to come down in China because the production compared to last year almost in the same level, more or less. So even in August, the production of China was the average of 2022. The average monthly production is already reached, which was 86 million ton. So the demand-wise, we don't see any reduction or reduce on the iron ore consumption, but the price is coming down by the time the coking coal price is increasing, which is $275.
Yeah, Hussein, I was observing your presentation this morning. You were saying that there's a serious decline in the basically production, Chinese production of steel. So obviously, if they're and then serious, you were talking about 5%,
About, yes.
and that's huge. So with that, obviously they're going to use less of iron ore because China is a blast furnace majority usage. By the way, what is the usage? Which one uses? I mean, in China, what is the percentage of usage of?
Iron ore and scrap.
Yeah,
I mean, in the production is the 15 to 16% is the scrap.
I see.
So 85% is the iron ore.
So if the production goes down, you would expect the basically
effect on
the
the
demand for
iron.
iron ore would go down.
Yes, more than on scrap.
Yeah. And the iron ore prices, has it come down lately? In the last, let's say, 3 months. Do you know, does anyone know the pricing? And Philip, can you just comment? Because I don't know the prices, how much it came down.
Today is increased 15 cent today. And let me check for the 3 months price.
Well, let's say 3 months, last 3 months.
Okay,
Where did it come from?
It's come from about 120 to, as you say, 96, 96 and a half today.
Oh, that's more than 10%, yes.
Okay, 30th of May, the iron ore price was 134.65. Now it's 96. So we're talking about
More than
$40 drop,
More than
which is about
which is expected.
30%,
Yes, huge,
almost.
huge.
And the coking coal price was $470. Now today 275.
I don't know that, but I'm following the Vale pricing in the in the stock exchange, and then their price is going down. I'm like wondering what the hell's going on. Anyway, well, this is the same question. I think it's silly because we keep getting the same question: billet versus scrap. I mean, for electric arc furnace and electric arc furnace versus blast furnace, which one is more favorable? Obviously, even at today's pricing, the blast furnace is much more advantageous if you take away the capital investment on the blast furnace. If you take that out and you look at the operational side, obviously blast furnace has huge advantage over the scrap production. That's what I think, but please comment.
So, see?
Okay, the regarding the production of the China, let me give you some figures which I have already shared in the morning. in June in 2022, the daily production in China was 2.4 million ton. It was in June. And the previous month, we have seen also the figure was 2.2 million ton, which is 7.9% decrease. In August, we have seen the daily production 2.3 million, 2.4 million daily basis. The reason was because of some weather improvement, and also some certain mills start to make the profit $15 to $20 per metric ton, and they start to increase their production. So that's the reason that the production is increased. In 2022, the average monthly production is 86 million ton. So if we take that number as a reference, so whole year, the production is not that much going to be much difference than last year figures, which is about over 1 billion ton.
And the export ratio compared to last year?
Export ratio for the flat, I don't think so is going to be much differences, but for the long product, yes. So the most probably for the export, considering that we will be seeing 70 million ton also in 2022, which is almost same as last year figures.
But
almost.
if you consider in today's market where the energy cost really went double, triple, or quadruple, and which one uses more energy? Obviously, electric arc furnace uses more energy than the blast furnace. So today's environment, I think the electric arc furnace is really in disadvantage over the blast furnace, and the pricing you will see that their cost must be a lot higher to produce the steel from the electric arc furnace. All right, let's move on. This next questions are on China. The real impact of Chinese government policies on the real production of steel in China, the export of Chinese steel. Hussein?
Okay, first of all, regarding the real estate in China, we've been seeing the new construction area in 2022, it came down 46% compared to last year. And also the developers and construction companies business also came down by 87% for the new construction. And the price of the housing, it keeps on coming down, and the people are thinking that they have not seen the bottom out yet for the house prices. And also the investment on the real estate also came down by 7.5%. And this year, the sales of the real estate came down 40% compared to 2021. In July, as compared to June 2022, also sales came down by 29% only within a month. And the real estate sector in China, considering of the whole economy in China, is referring is 15 to 20%. So that's the reason that we've been seeing some approaches from the Chinese government always keep the real estate sector alive, such as in July in 2022, we have seen $44 billion is injected to the market to keep the real estate sector, alive.
Yeah. Actually, I was also part of the second question, so I moved on. So let's just go to the next one. How do you see the future development of Chinese steel sector, given the recent rise in China's imports of low-priced steel from Russia?
I mean,
One, are they importing from Russia?
yes, China has been importing slab, mainly from Russia, coal, especially from Russia. And unfortunately, that was one of the reasons that is not allowing the Chinese prices to pick up as well. So because right now the supply, which is about 450,000 ton, which we are seeing for the 427,000 ton for the import of the slab. is also increased about 190,000 ton compared to July. So that the average import of the slab was 255,000 ton. But we see minimum 200,000 ton is increased because of the Russian attractive slab prices. And also coal is the one of the biggest supplies coming from Russia to China.
Okay, next questions are on Turkey. First one is state of demand of finished long products in Turkey and the world, and main drivers of the present situation. Actually, from what I know, and there's a gentleman here from Turkey, I think he should comment. But from what I understand, the domestic demand, the construction demand in Turkey has come down dramatically. So it's not only related to today's energy costs, it's related to the current economy in Turkey. But the gentleman from Çolakoğlu may comment if you don't mind.
I think you are right, but lately we have a very strong domestic market. I don't know why. It will not continue. I'm not sure what is the reason, but probably next week we will have a very low demand.
Is it on long products or
Long.
is it on flat products?
Long.
Long products. How about the flat product business?
Flat is not. There is no demand in flat at the moment.
Yeah.
In the first 8 months of 2022, we have seen a 12% consumption decrease in Turkey, which is referring 2.3 million ton compared to last year figures. 12% came now.
Of course, the exports of Turkey is limited, and there's a quotas in Europe, which is their main market, and there's a 232 in the US, which is 25% tax on the Turkish products. So really, there's not a whole lot of place for the Turkish steel to go. And when the domestic market is not doing well, the whole steel industry is not doing well. Let's go to the next question. Since Turkish long products have few chances to sell to the US and Europe due to protectionist measures, which alternative markets are they targeting? Again, maybe you can comment on it since you are working on the Turkish industry. From Çolakoğlu, gentlemen.
Our main market is the US. I think there is no demand coming from the Europe at the moment. So I don't know at the moment, but main market is US right now.
How about like Africa and Middle East? Actually, Middle East is competing with you right now.
Nothing.
Middle East competing now.
Yes.
Maybe China.
Yeah, I wish. The one of the main market or the potential market for Turkey is all we know for the rebar is Singapore and Hong Kong. So those are the market that Turkey really prefers, at least to make some potential sales, bulk sales. But unfortunately, right now, I can clearly say that $100-$150 price differences we've been seeing from the other suppliers. So
Into China?
to Singapore and Hong Kong, especially from Middle East supplier, we've been seeing such a price differences plus the freight charges. So unfortunately, those markets also right now is lost for Turkey market.
How about China selling to the Indonesia and Malaysia and all these countries?
The thing is, for Singapore and Hong Kong, China doesn't sell rebar, but the Malaysia, they sell to rebar to also Singapore and Hong Kong. But regular for the export for the flat product, yes, China is been regularly shipping. It's about 4 million ton per month they've been shipping to Southeast Asia.
Okay, because I used to know that the Turks used to sell to whenever US closes, they used to go to the Far East, but now I understand the Far East is tough because of China selling to Far East. and they have even lower cost because they're using the Russian billets and slabs, from what I understand.
I
Just to
fully agree. I fully agree with you. What we used to do earlier is whenever the market, one of the market closed down, we used to have always the alternative to divert our production or our sales. As you just mentioned, whenever US is closed, Canada was the one of the option, or Middle East was one of the option, and also Singapore and Hong Kong. But unfortunately, we don't see the right now any alternative to export much. The reason is because there is no replacement countries. The reason that there is no replacement country or market because each market is having the same problem. The problem is money. The absence of the money, reaching the money is getting harder. The cost of the money is getting increased. So that's the reason that the projects are slowing down and there are no alternative markets, unfortunately.
But what impact does that mean to the production of the Turkish rebar mills and wire rod mills? Are they now drastically lowering capacity? And
They
if
are
no,
lowering. In fact, I know that some of them took the summer for 2-3 weeks stop and production. So they have to because there is no market to go to.
In June 2022, 13% came down, the production of
13.
Turkey, 13. In July in 2020, 21% came down.
Yeah.
And by the time the consumption also came down 12%.
Yeah. All right. The next question is still on Turkey. Turkish mills have purchased a lot of Russian origin steel products, especially billets. Do you believe it will lead to constraints for possible export sales to Europe and US in the near future? I can speak for US. I don't think they can use that for selling to the US. Like I said before, we do check for the melt and pour, so it's almost impossible for them to do that. Besides, I just heard that the Canadian government is going after the importers for checking to see if whatever they brought even before it was Russian origin on. So there's a serious measures being taken today. So I don't think it's possible. But go ahead.
Next question.
Okay. The energy prices are rising in many regions, resulting in higher production costs. Besides EU, Turkey is also under pressure of rising energy costs, with at least 50% increase in both electricity and natural gas prices for industrial users. Do you think it will result in reduction in production in Turkey as it did in EU? And we just answered that, yes,
Yes,
it
sir.
did. I think I want to move on because we have more questions. The next question is more new players in the global markets, North Africa, GCG, and switch from import markets to export. Do you agree? I guess that's the question.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we have seen lately with the investment of Tosyali in Algeria that there is a quite big new player on the block, and starting with rebars, wire rods, and the next investment of flat products is already on the way. We see more and more capacity coming up also from Morocco. In Algeria, there is another producer of rebars as well, who is also looking already for for getting the homologations in place and so on. So there is quite an activity over there. So they are definitely coming from a traditional import market to an export market.
I know from the United Arab Emirates, a lot of steel is coming to the U.S. And also Algeria recently has been selling rebar and wire rod to the U.S. as well. So yes, there's definitely a replacement there.
Yeah, Oman as well. Oman was previously
And
a
also
big importer.
in our part of the world, we've been also seeing more aggressive GCC producers. One of the reasons that we believe because of the local market is slowing down and they prefer to export their production to Southeast Asia. Rebar, billets, wire rod, profiles. So price-wise, also they are quite, attractive compared to the rest of the producers, I can say.
I'll go to the next question. Which countries are the major influencers nowadays with regard to the price trends in the global steel market? Now there is an influencer in steel trade too now. I thought, yeah.
After this question should be, what country after China should be more?
Exactly. Exactly. China is the major one, but let's talk about the others. I guess the next one will be Russia. They make a big impact on the pricing in the world steel pricing today.
Yep.
From my side, I can say that the India is becoming
No.
a major
point.
influencer in the business. Turkey used to be and still is important factor, but I think they when you put it in the same way to China and Russia, Turkey is insignificant from what I see.
Yeah. Fully agree.
Do you guys see any other country that we should be looking into? Okay. Long question again. How do you assess the willingness of buyers to pay for green steel than for traditional, while investor pressures on large multinational consumers such as automakers and heavy machinery manufacturers are having some impact? The construction industry is still largely unreceptive to green price hikes. I guess they're trying to see if there's still an influence of a green steel. Is the customers really asking for a green steel? I mean, I heard that the auto industry is really looking into it, but really, as far as the construction, I don't know any. But maybe in Europe, it's a different position.
In Europe, we have more and more the trend that yeah, it should be environmentally nice. It should be have no CO2 emission and sustainable and all these things. So yeah, this green steel and this sustainability is also, of course, a kind of fashion and art right now. It's also for some companies, it's a marketing model. If we see more and more international inspection companies who are giving you a certificate that you are green because you have maybe donated for a small piece of land somewhere in Guatemala with 3 pineapple trees or whatever, and then you are green. Yeah, and yeah, this is of course something nice for the heart. It's a business which is heavily pushed by those who are making money out of it. But also, what we definitely see is that the investors, the banks, more and more are putting funds on the table, which offer to investors a green package, saying this is a green building, this is green, this is more greener than the green, and so there are projects like that, and if you have a project like that, you have to follow the rules, and then the people have to buy green steel on paper, yeah, and of course they will try everything not to pay more, but in the end they have to pay more because it's requested by the investor.
In the US, for a certain building to qualify as, let's say, green, they do ask us on the steel or how it's done, and we always give a certificate saying that it is electric arc furnace and it's recycled steel, and we do a great job in keeping the environment safe and clean. So, and it's okay, but I don't think we take it to the next level of looking at how the energy is produced and used.
Yeah, but you have also the carbon issue and emission problem. So some are already asking where the stuff is coming from. So if you have a long transportation,
Yeah.
yeah, and a lot of oil you are burning on the vessel, then it's not nice. So you should buy locally and very, very green.
You can tell them that they're using hydrogen-powered vessels now.
That would be the best.
Anyway, let's go to the next question. Do you expect any profound changes in the approach to decarbonization given the energy crisis? I have no idea. Philip, you have any idea on that one?
So I think we've sort of all we've answered this question really, but I was going to give an answer to an earlier one, which is: do we expect any long-term changes to trade flows as a result of this energy crisis? And I agree with Samir, who said that there's going to be huge investment in green energy. I detect a slight cynicism from you, Willy, in the whole green world, but there is going to be a huge investment in green energy, and particularly in Europe. Not just because of the cost of power, but also the political separation and reliance on Russia and other sources of power, so power independence, which is a strategic decision independent of cost. And when we have a lot more green energy in Europe, in the EU I'm talking about, and the UK, then the traditional competitive advantage that Turkey has had, which is lower environmental conditions and also much cheaper power, will disappear. And in the long term, and I know this does keep senior executives in Turkish steel mills awake at night. I don't mean to be too pessimistic about their future, but in the long term, it does not make any sense to export scrap from Northern Europe to Turkey, melt it in Turkey, make a rebar out of it, and send it back to Northern Europe. And so if the power is sufficiently cheap in the UK or in Germany with lots of green energy, and the scrap comes from there, and you automatically then save whatever, $30 a ton just shipping the scrap to Turkey, I do expect the steel to be produced where the scrap is, as long as the energy is there, which it will be now as a result of this geopolitical crisis with Russia. So I think there'll be a major long-term effect.
Thank you. You get a microphone here.
I mean, I was just thinking that this increase in the price of gas overnight from 5.5 to 12 that hit the cement factory is not innocent. This is a way to tax the carbon. I mean, because it is highly polluting the cement factory. And this is why this is decarbonization is taxing the carbon. This is a way by the Egyptian government to tax them.
So you think the price increases because they're just taxing? Yes, I mean, I still think that it's because the world energy price, the gas prices, I should say, went up. I mean, keep in mind in the U.S. we used to pay $2 BTU. Now it is 5, and in Europe you're what, 20, 30?
No, there is for the cement factory, I think using clinker is about $90 now, or €90. I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
While they might get an advantage to use slag, because the slag, then you are recycling, you are not using the clinker. But then you need investment again to use the slag rather than the clinker. The slag is available, I don't know, $12, $15 per ton FOB plus the transport. If you get it from a short distance, then it's not much.
So you're saying that the cement industry has to really look at that energy. Yeah.
Might look what to use, clinker or slag. Maybe shift to clinker. Shift from clinker to slag.
I think one of the problems on the cement industry is controlled by 3-4 companies in the world. So they do whatever they want. I guess this is the last question. What's your forecast and outlook about construction market demand supply balances in each major region of the world for the first half of 2023? Let me speak for America. We're really expecting a recession coming to the US. So we think that demand will go down in the US on almost everything. And recession is not because of the world crisis that everybody's going through, the energy crisis, because we don't have energy crisis. Basically, ours is trying to take out some of the money that they poured into the economy. So they're trying to increase the interest rates so that they can slow the economy down. But for the Europe, maybe you can respond.
Yeah. So in Europe, we expect that the first half of next year will be decently okay. We will definitely see a drop in the private investment in housing, private housing, and so on, but we still see an enormous amount of infrastructure projects, in particular in Germany, but also in Benelux. We see that still the industrial buildings are being continued. So also investment projects like high-rise buildings and so on are still moving on. But definitely we see in overall reduction of the activities in rebars, and this will probably continue for the whole of 2023 because with the also increasing interest rates, yeah, the investments will slow down, especially in the private sector. So, and everyone who has to put a new loan on his house and mortgage has to be renewed will be in deep trouble because we are meanwhile from 0.8% to 3.5, almost 4% for a mortgage right now. So that will have a severe impact. But again, we don't see it as negative yet because the industrial sector and the real and the logistics, like highways, bridges, and so on, will continue.
For the Middle East and Africa, can Samir give us a comment, please? Can you just give the microphone to Mr. Samir?
Well, if we listen to Mr. Saleh, the Middle East is progressing. The growth is up. And they always had high interest. The interest in Egypt has always been about 12%. In Turkey, what is 13%?
18.
Now 18, sorry. I mean, we are used to this amount. People use mostly, own funds when they buy a house. They prepare themselves long time. They get family support, etc. Now, of course, in these countries with higher interest, the normal construction might drop. I mean, but high-end buildings are still selling high. I mean, this Evergrande house in London, maybe fetching 200 million or whatever pounds, is not affected if you are in the center of London, wherever. But certainly, the people who is borrowing the first time 150 or 200,000 pounds will have it difficult to pay 4% instead of 2% capped.
Exactly.
So, so you think that in the Middle East in 23, everything will be just the same or better?
They have construction projects in big projects in Saudi Arabia, Dubai, Qatar. Plus, housing is growing, so they don't feel it.
Yeah, because of the population, it's growing up very fast down there.
That's true. True. And for Southeast Asia, maybe Hussein can.
Sure. Actually, there is one very important event in 16th of October in China. There's a Communist Party election. So in this kind of elections before, the government always given some positive signals to the market. in order to activate the local demand, stimulation, injecting something to the market just to keep the consumption to in some certain level. Southeast Asia, I believe that the Southeast Asia is going to be net exporter for the next coming 3 months, 5 months. So we will be seeing more material from Southeast Asia, including China as well.
And these are the questions that we have received, but is there any other subject that you want us, all of us, to discuss? Is there anything that's bothering you guys that needs to be verbalized here? I mean, I can tell you for the traders that nobody's asking, but you have a serious issue with the credit. Credits are getting tougher and tougher. So that is one issue that should be on your mind every day. And the second one is if you think that you're insuring the credit, the insurance is getting higher and higher as well. And the third, I'm just throwing it up so that you all can discuss if you want to. There's serious issues that we have in the U.S. on the ports, and I just heard that in Egypt they had the same issue for different reasons. We have materials coming into the U.S., and it takes us sometimes 2 months to take it out of the port, and it's because we can't find truck drivers, and then we can't find people to work at the port, so when the material comes in, they just dump it out by the seaside, and then it sits there getting rust. I mean, it's on the seaside, imagine. And we don't have enough indoor space because a lot of cargoes get stuck, and some of them get stuck because there's another cargo came in front of it, and until that one leaves, the first one cannot leave. Um, the cost of really importing into the US became a major problem because of the ports. I mean, you all heard about what's going on the West Coast, where the vessels sit out there for months. But now those vessels thought about coming through the Panama Canal and to the East Coast to, let's say, Houston. And today, I think Houston is probably more congested than even California. And the vessels sit out there, and if you bought the cargo free out, you're into paying a lot of money because that vessel has to just wait for X many days before it can really come to berth to discharge, and you are going to pay for the detention during that time. And then once it arrives, you take the cargo out. Uh, Earliest you can take out is 2 weeks, but really you can't. I mean, sometimes the ports tell us that your free time is 10 days and 15 days. After that, you pay for for the storage. But it's their fault that you can't take it out because they put another cargo in front of it. And just because it's their fault does not mean that you don't have to pay. You still have to pay. It's their fault and you still have to pay. So it's crazy what's going on. This is mostly in actually it's almost all the ports in the US. It's just the same congestion that's going on. Is the same situation happening in Europe?
Yeah, we have very similar issues. You can take all the North Sea ports from Rotterdam, Antwerp, Flushing, whatever, up to even Eastern Germany. All the ports are full, same issues and same problems as you described. Material is sitting there. They have no space. Vessels which are trying to enter get not served because they have no space. Then they had no workers. We are lacking truck drivers. Then we had a horrible summer dryness. There was almost no rain from end of May till probably August, including. So we had the lowest ever river river height on most of the German rivers, and since the barging is taking enormous amount of this volume, simply the ports were stuck, absolutely stuck, and so now it's starting a little bit, but very very slowly to recover. But still, there is material sitting there, which is from June, and still it's not being delivered.
Another issue is labor. I'd like to know how many of you have labor issues, where labor issues mean you can't find enough labor. You can't find white collar or blue collar. Do you have any problems? If you have it, just raise your hand because I want to see how many of y'all have labor issues. Yeah. I'm surprised because it's a major issue that we're going through in the US. We can't find people to work. We can't find people to really do the from secretarial work to the office job. We can't find people who wants to really do a steel trading, our job. Can't find people to work at the ports, and you can't find people enough people to do the to drive your trucks. You know, we have equipment, but we have no driver. That's for the U.S. I'm surprised that not all of you have shared the same. And I assume in Middle East, in Palestine, you have that. That's interesting. You would
Even in the ports, we have the same. We have the same congestion also.
at the
We
port.
have waiting time 1 month.
Oh my God!
It's really killing us.
Because of the congestion.
Yes.
But it's a COVID post-COVID matter
Well,
in your case, or
No.
because in Europe at least we kind of see that this is still a post-COVID issue, that a lot of people are ill, they left the job. It's very easy to say your boss that you are ill, you stay at home, and that's why a lot of workers simply don't come to the job.
well, I have a feeling it's lingering further because, yes, it started with COVID, and now the government gave a lot of subsidy to the labor force, so now they don't want to work as much. And another issue, again, most of you must have, is the employees want to work from home. You know, we have a major issue. We have to negotiate with every one of our employees on how many days they will show up to work, real work. So it's a it's a really ongoing dilemma in the U.S. and you have to just match the others, and the others are giving X many days. Next thing you know, the truck drivers will be working out of home as well.
Maybe.
Yes, sir. It is a microphone. Yeah.
Yeah, essentially, this is a question for us all. But with respect to post-COVID world and working from home, yeah, how do you guys see or gauge the productivity levels? Because I mean, I've observed different sort of approaches to this question. One is essentially some claim that the productivity levels have fallen indeed, but some other people have been saying that, well, you know, previously I used to get up at like 7. I used to be at the office at 9, and then I used to leave at 6. So, but now I get up at 7. I start working until 6 p.m. in the evening. So, I mean, there are different perspectives, but in general, you know, how do you see the productivity levels post-COVID world and working from home?
Look, if the guy really wants to work, he'll work anywhere. But the problem is the working out of home is people get used to it, and I see a lot of people walking their dogs. I see this is on business hours. I see a lot of people doing their shopping and with the phone on their ear as they're doing whatever they're doing to do the same thing. Um, I honestly believe that the productivity does go down, and you're missing the most important thing in business world, where you cooperate with your colleague and you learn something from your colleague. if you're in sales, somebody next to you is making a sale and you want to know why he made that sale and you want to know what the pricing is. So it is instantaneous. Now, the advantage that we have learned from the COVID years is the like Teams meeting, where I think sometimes you want to talk to your colleague online so you can share the same screen and talk about that. That part is fine, but I personally don't believe that you are more productive sitting at with your pajamas and answering the phone.
I don't agree, and I think it's a matter of personality. And as Don said, if you want to work, you can work everywhere. I mean, we are even working here, being in Monaco and being at this conference. But still, if you have something to do, you write an email, and it doesn't matter if it is 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, or 8. I agree with you. It. Some people can handle it, others may not be so good in handling their.
And the difference is the how many years of experience you have, and like I think everyone here can easily work anywhere, but I'm talking about the guys who just entered the workforce, or someone who really has been there only for a few years, does not have that habit of working like us 24 hours. So, yes, it's true for you and it's true for someone who has been doing this for years, but the new workforce, which is the one that I have a problem in negotiating, is tough because they don't know what's going on. They don't, the culture, each company, I assume, has a certain culture. To teach the culture, you have to be there. In my company, we know that we have a certain things that we do and certain things that we don't. But I don't have a black and white piece of paper saying you do this, you don't do that. You just live it, and on to really understand what's going on. So it's my experience. It really doesn't mean us, because I think everyone here is very much capable of doing from anywhere.
What we experienced in our company in COVID times is that it's very much depending also on the environment the people are working at home. Because if you have young kids, if you don't have a private room where you can really close and lock the door, then for some of those it was a real hustle, and it was really stressful because the kids do not understand that you are working now. Yeah, they say, "Oh, dad is at home, so let's play and do something." So, and then the wife is running around with the food and so on in the kitchen because he has no other room. So he said, "I refuse it. I don't want to work at home. I rather come here and go into in the Besenkammer. What is this? Well, yeah. So and I work from there, but I can't work at home because I don't have the proper environment for that. And then I think it's fair, but others who have a decent home, a decent apartment where they can handle that, we have made very good experiences, and they were as reachable as they were in the office.
In the early of their years, they never have that. They never have a study. They never have those private rooms to be able to do that. So it's tough, and they still insist on it. But I personally think that it's not as productive at all. And by the way, the one of the biggest banks, J.P. Morgan, as soon as the pandemic is over, and he called everyone and says, you all need to show up to work and not just leave the company. And so Goldman Sachs did the same thing, and I tend to believe that they're gonna have to the guys who don't want to do that, they have to leave.
All right, any other question, comments? If this is not the case, then I want to say thank you very much for your contribution, for listening to us, and hope to see you on the 88th IREPAS, most probably in Barcelona.